Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva, currently in first place in the women's singles short program in Beijing, today with this stunning performance. After making history last week as the first woman to ever successfully land a quad jump in the Olympics. But if she places in the top 3 on Thursday, she won't get a medal. Neither will the second and third place finishers because of a doping scandal surrounding the 15-year-old.
It is a catastrophic failure of the system to protect clean athletes and the integrity of the largest, biggest games of the year.
It's the latest example in a years-long saga involving Russian athletes illegally using performance-enhancing drugs. It all started after Valieva tested positive for a banned heart medication, trametazidine. The drug can increase blood flow efficiency and improve endurance. In an interview with Russian TV Channel 1, Valieva's emotional, saying these days have been very difficult, but she's happy she can perform. The International Olympic Committee, or IOC, deciding there will be no medals or award ceremony for the competition until an investigation of Valieva's doping case is complete.
Every single woman, instead of being asked about her program, it's going to be, what do you think about Kamila Valieva? Their Olympic moment is being robbed, and that is a sports tragedy.
Valieva's test sample was taken by the Russian Anti-Doping Association, or RUSADA, on December 25th at the National Championships in St. Petersburg. But her positive test results were not reported until February 8th, after she'd already competed in the Olympics twice and won gold in the team event. RUSADA provisionally suspended Valieva that day, but then immediately reversed the ban the next day.
She was still practicing and still, from what we understand, had her accreditation still at the games. I mean, if they truly provisionally suspended her, all of that should have been taken away.
On Monday, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS, paving the way for Valieva to compete today.
The CAS panel in charge of this matter has decided to let Ms. Valieva continue her participation in the Olympic Winter Games Beijing 2022.
CAS citing exceptional circumstances, saying at 15 years old, Valieva's a protected person under the World Anti-Doping Association's rules, and that preventing her from competing would cause irreparable harm. WADA expressing disappointment in the decision, saying it found that Valieva's test was not flagged by RUSADA as being a priority sample. This meant the laboratory did not know to fast-track the analysis of this sample. RUSADA blaming the pandemic for the delay. The Russian Olympic Committee saying Valieva passed doping tests since December 25th. Valieva claiming in court the medication was ingested accidentally after a mix-up with her grandfather's pills.
She presented elements which brought some doubts about guilt.
The Russian Olympic Committee has called for a full and impartial investigation. Top figure skaters expressing their shock and disappointment with CAS's ruling allowing Valieva to continue to skate, including 2018 bronze medalist Adam Rippon, who's coaching Mariah Bell in the same competition as Valieva. Is it overshadowing these games, do you think?
Totally. This is completely unprecedented that there's an athlete in the competition who's tested positive. It's completely against the moral code of being an Olympian.
Tara Lipinski, champion of the ladies singles competition at the 1998 Winter Games at Nagano, Japan, tweeting she should not be allowed to compete. Regardless of age or timing of the test results, I believe this will leave a permanent scar on our sport. There is precedent for athletes receiving stiff penalties for using the same drug as Valieva. In 2018, at the last Winter Games, Russian bobsledder Nadezhda Sageva was disqualified after admitting to the doping violation. Some athletes left wondering if there's a double standard at play in Valieva's case.
Richardson's going to Tokyo, 1087!
U.S. sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson captivated America as a rising star during the 2020 Tokyo Olympic trials. Her dreams then dashed over a failed drug test for marijuana ahead of the Summer Games last year. She also voiced her outrage at yesterday's decision on social media, tweeting, "Can we get a solid answer on the difference of her situation and mine? My mother died and I can't run and was also favored to place top 3. The only difference I see is I'm a black young lady."
When it came to Sha'Carri's case to begin with, was really disappointing. President Biden said with Sha'Carri, the rules are the rules.
And then, of course, compare and contrast to Russia, our friends the Russians, who, of course, literally no rule means anything to them.
Russia's blatant disregard for clean sport became apparent just before the 2016 Summer Games, after evidence surfaced that Russia created and implemented an elaborate doping scheme for its athletes while hosting the 2014 Games in Sochi.
Russia had pulled off the single biggest fraud in the history of sport.
The explosive story chronicled in the 2017 Netflix documentary Icarus.
big boss Vladimir Putin saying, we have shown the best result in Sochi.
Russian scientist Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov, who had run Russia's anti-doping lab, blowing the whistle on his country's government-run cheating program. According to Rodchenkov, during the Sochi Games, Russian intelligence agents posed as maintenance workers, entering the athlete testing lab, then breaking into tamper-proof collection bottles and swapping out dirty urine of Russian athletes for clean samples.
Because they controlled, everything about those Olympic Games, that they had the lock, they had the key, they ran the bank, they operated the vault, they could essentially facilitate, whatever they wanted.
15 of the 33 Russian medal winners at the 2014 Sochi Games were later found to have doped.
How important were the 2014 Olympics to Russia?
Putin spent $51 billion. That's how important it was. Everything we're doing here, it all began in Sochi. It was the Russian pride to try to win medals.
The World Anti-Doping Association, or WADA, would back up Rodchenkov's claims about the Sochi doping plan in a July 2016 report.
The Russian Ministry of Sport directed, controlled, and oversaw the manipulation of athletes' analytical results.
Russian President Vladimir Putin denied the allegations.
Прежде всего, допинг как таковой и проблема допинга. Во-первых, в России никогда не создавалось.
The IOC Disciplinary Commission stated at the time there wasn't any documented evidence confirming that the Russian president was directly involved. The IOC would limit Russia's participation in the 2016 Rio Games, then ban them as an official team from the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. In 2019, WADA banned the Russian flag and anthem from the Olympics and other major sports for 4 years, the Court of Arbitration for Sport reducing it to just 2 years. Russian athletes not allowed to wear anything representing their country, now competing in Beijing and Tokyo last summer as the neutral Russian Olympic Committee, or ROC.
There's really no chance that you can trust a Russia investigation into their own handling of this sort of affair. We haven't seen any correction in behavior, and at the end of the day, it's because there's been no meaningful consequence put into them.
We've been here before. Will anything ever change?
The only answer for this is to ban Russia from the Paris Olympics in 2024 and ban them again from the Milan Olympics in 2026. I mean, it's like a cancer. You have to cut out the cancer.
Valieva is set to compete in the second day of the women's single program on Thursday. The investigation into her doping case could last months. The timing of the scandal coming as all eyes have already been on Russia as tensions build with Ukraine.
Russia sees their athletes, as symbols of their nationalism, as a strong statement of the power of Russia. It's not by chance, right, that a few days after the Sochi 14 Winter Olympic Games, they invaded Crimea. And it's coincidental, to say the least. Here we are once again on the verge of Russia invading Ukraine.
It may all feel like we've been here before, but for the athletes competing in these games, the need for a resolution couldn't be more urgent.
The system only works if athletes believe that those who are enforcing the rules have their back. And the moment that they lose trust, that's when they say, wait a minute, I either need to cheat because that's the only way I'm going to win, or I need to leave this sport. And neither one of those options is acceptable.
For Nightline, I'm Maggie Rulli in Beijing.